I guess we'll start with Snuffy.
Well, there's a lot of technical things inside them. So how do you juggle all those things? Like, what's it like in there? Is it like
For those listening in their car, this is a good time to switch to the video version because he's demonstrating for us.
So the lip sync is with the left hand here. The eyes are on a little bar. Look left, look right, blink, blink, blink. I twist that, and the trunk will kind of...
Welcome back to Puppeteers. I'm your host, Adam Krupinger, and we have Cameron Garrity back as our co-host.
Hey, everybody.
Today we're talking to Martin P. Robinson. Welcome to the show, Martin.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, so...
hey, hello, you two, and I guess, whoever's watching this, which it will be hundreds of thousands of people, I'm guessing, right?
Let's hope so. So,
all right.
Tens of people. So, we always do a little intro at the top. So, like many people who listen to Puppeteers, the Muppets have always been a place held near and dear to my heart. But if you were always to ask me what my favorite shows and specials and characters are, I always turn to Sesame Street. Adam, you know this from 10 years of knowing each other. And I love how the show could parody stories past and present. As I grew up, I admired the educational agenda across the globe. And when I really began to understand more of the behind the scenes, I fell in love with the cast of performers and their vocation to bolster the art of puppetry. They were using their talents to make the world a better place, and from the looks of it, having a lot of fun at the same time. So our guest today is one of those performers. This is the man who has the special distinction of performing Sesame Street's largest character, Mr. Snuffleupagus, its smallest character, Slimey the Worm, and its most neurotic character, Mr. Telly Monster. So we're going to ask Marty about his nearly 40-year career at Sesame Street and on other educational television shows, his work on Little Shop of Horrors, getting his start with Bill Baird, overseeing all kinds of groundbreaking puppetry at the National Puppetry Conference at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center. So we're so thrilled to have him here. Martin Robinson, welcome to Puppeteers.
Puppeteers. So yeah. We're going to talk about all that stuff?
Well, we'll see what we could do.
And I want to say congratulations on your recent article. Was it in the New York Times, was it?
There was a thing in the New York Times in the children's section. How I became a puppeteer.
Yeah, that was really cool. I think as soon as I started reading it, and I saw that it said that you were fagin, I was like, oh my gosh, you look like such a fagin.
It said that I was fagin?
I think so.
I guess it did. I guess I'll have to read that thing again. I skimmed it. I skimmed it, and then I sent it to my mom, who's been bugging me about getting it to her.
Yeah, your mom and the rest of the world got it in the paper. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Now, I think I said you were fagin in the 8th grade musical or something like that.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind
of that was one of those things where that was kind of my entry into performing. It was one of those. I had one teacher who believed in me, and I kind of got the part through her, and there was no reason for anyone to believe that I could play that or any other part whatsoever. But for some reason, she believed in me, and I did it, and it changed my life. So that teacher always has a very special place in my heart. It's just she threw that little pebble in the water, and the rings just kept expanding.
So what kind of kid were you growing up? Were you always interested in the arts and performance, or what made you tick back then?
I think I wasn't interested in performing really at all. I always drew. I always built little things. I always fiddled in the workshop, that type of stuff. But that was mostly on my own. I was the youngest of 3 brothers, and so I was, we would have crazy adventures, us and the neighbor kids. But it wasn't, but I think what attracted me to performing was the ability to be something else, the ability to not be myself. It all started out with Halloween. So I had, one day a year when I didn't have to be myself, and I could, put on a mask and run screaming through the neighborhood and, and at some point I remember actually thinking, this is too much fun to only do one day a year. I've got to figure out how to stretch this out.
That's great.
And so acting kind of became the outlet for that.
Yeah.
So what kind of costumes were you wearing as a kid? Like, did you make your own?
I started out wearing those little, the little plastic skeletons. So I was big on skeletons when I was little. The Ben Nye, the super flammable ones. And then I went through a long Wolfman phase where I would start. One of the other really important points in my life was Dick Smith's Do-It-Yourself monster makeup book. It was released through Famous Monsters of Filmland. You can get a copy. That's you might be able to find some out there. Anyway, it was Dick Smith, the Academy Award-winning makeup designer. He got the Academy Award for Amadeus, but he did the stuff for Exorcist as well. He was one of the first guys who actually kind of fused makeup special effects and puppetry special effects. And so I just absorbed all of his stuff and read that book from cover to cover, and started doing my own makeup special effects, even casting my face in plaster and doing kind of simple prosthetics. So that was my entry into acting, was makeup special effects, and then from acting to puppetry, way down the line. But when I finally met Dick Smith, I told him, listen, I'm doing what I'm doing, and I kind of am who I am in the profession, because you wrote this do-it-yourself monster makeup book that I devoured back when I was in the 5th grade. And he said, "Oh, thanks. You're welcome." And I said, "No, you mean my life has totally changed because of this book." And he finally got there. Oh, geez, that he was kind of responsible for, me doing something interesting with my life.
Well, and I'm sure you have plenty of conversations like that now as people visit Sesame Street and the O'Neill and some other places, of people who look up to you and see that influence, whether it was from the Muppets or Little Shop. It must be nice to be able to pay it forward a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's yes. And when you have important people in your life that make a difference like that, you want to make a difference for somebody else. So yeah, I've taken that on, and I can see, I don't know, maybe 5, maybe 10 really great mentors in my life. There should be more. Every teacher you ever have in school should be just this incredibly inspiring new person. For me, it wasn't always that way, but I had enough to at key points in my life. So yeah, that's something I try to do now.
So we were kind of going through your history and such, and it looks like at around the same time you were not only auditioning to start Snuffy over at Sesame Street, but also doing Little Shop. Which one of those two came first? Because it seems like they were around just both the early 80s or so.
They were. I started Sesame Street in 81. I had gone to acting school. I auditioned for a lot of puppet companies. I got interested in puppetry as opposed to acting because I wasn't limited by my 6'2" human white guy from Wisconsin frame. Who's interested in seeing him? And I was able to do all kinds of characters, which is why I got into acting. And so by the time I got the audition for Muppets, I had worked for a lot of different puppet companies, marionette companies, hand puppets, rod puppets, shadow puppets. I had a smattering of a lot. So I had worked, when I worked for Bill Baird, we had done some classic hand-style puppetry along with the marionetting. His shows were always very eclectic in style. So I knew enough to get in the door for the audition for Sesame. I got into Sesame in 81. There was a massive audition, and it turned out there was one job for Snuffy. And at that point, being a 6-foot human with a deep voice actually helped me because that was kind of required. So based on my first year at Sesame, I was able to afford doing Little Shop of Horrors. I had gone years before that. I had gone broke doing really, really artistic stuff. Some really artistic, wonderful stuff that just didn't pay squat, and I just went dirt broke. And I called my mom up and said, "Mom, I can't make my rent," and that just broke my heart. So I made a pact with myself, which was I got to get paid for what I do. And when I started working for Sesame, that was really the first real money I ever made in my life. When I just felt, oh God, it was more money than I knew what to do with. And trust me, it wasn't that much the first year, but man, my,
not having any to
yeah.
steady.
So the point of that was that when Little Shop of Horrors came along in '82, it was a non-paying job. We got paid, I think, $300 for the entire first run at the WPA theater. And they were going to pay for the materials for the plants. But, and I was wrestling with this promise I had made with myself to, that I had to get paid. And this didn't really qualify. But I loved Howard Ashman so much, and Alan Menken was actually working at Sesame Street at the time and had, came by and said, I know Howard talked to you. What do you think? Does this sound like something you'd like to do? Yeah, I'm going to do, so I kind of bankrolled the plants myself based on on income from Sesame Street, and was able to live and eat while I built the plants. Of course, they paid me back for all the materials, which was lovely. And then the fun part about working on a Little Shop of Horrors was that it started out really, really small. Really, it's just a showcase production of 24 performances in a 99-seat house. And then it just kept going and going and going and took over the world. And when I was 28, 29 then, and I thought that, oh yeah, this happens all the time. It doesn't happen all the time. I got struck by lightning on that show. And it has been and still is, a continuing thrill ride.
So continuing involvement.
Long answer to a simple question.
Yeah.
Say again?
Do you continue to be involved in that in some way?
Yes. I have I own a piece of the production.
Very cool.
Which is lovely. I consult here and there. When I did it back in '82, I knew I was just old enough and just experienced enough to be able to do that. And then when it came up again for the Broadway, they call it a revival, but it technically wasn't a revival because it had never been on Broadway. But when it came up in 2003, I was just young enough and to still be able to do that, to do that show. Of course, the budget was considerably larger. The budget on the first production was about $2,000.
For just the
budget on the Broadway production was considerably larger.
So did you have any involvement in the scripting at all of the show? Because when you watch that, it seems like it's sort of written and scripted around some of the technical limitations or demands of the puppet. Did you have any say in how that had to work or anything like that?
Howard Ashman was, you don't meet too many geniuses in your life. Howard Ashman was just wonderful man and an astounding genius. I mean, all the wonderful things that have been said about him, aren't nearly enough. He visualized that thing really well. And, I get a lot of credit for doing the plants for Little Shop of Horrors, but Howard Ashman and Alan Menken wrote that thing. And, I was very much realizing their vision. I mean, yeah, they weren't puppeteers, and they didn't, and I did bring a lot of what I knew to it. When I had the first meeting with Howard, for instance, it was just, I brought a bunch of stuff that I'd built, and we sat down and he talked about the project and, about his love of the project when he was a kid. And I had seen the movie, the original movie. They were talking about the Corman film, which was released in 1960. And I had seen it back then, and, it was just, one of those wonderful, crazy little films that we had both loved. So we had that kind of original connection. But when he was talking about one of the scenes, if you know the show, the "Don't Go to Show You Never Know" scene, which is where the plant is a little bit further along, and he had an idea where the way he described it was, there's a plant, and the second version of the plant, Seymour sets it down here, and there's a puppeteer under this piece of furniture, and animates the thing, and then he picks it up, and the puppeteer goes out, and then he sets it someplace else. And says, another puppeteer, works it someplace else. And that would keep happening every place he set it down. And at the meeting, I said, well, why don't we do the old fake arm gag, which he did not know. Thankfully, because it seemed like I was really smart when all I was pulling was, was just an old vaudeville gag. Rod and Emu have been doing it for years. Out of Australia. But, it's just, I said, we got a fake arm, and you trick it out so that it looks real good. And Seymour's hand is up there. We work a little ventriloquist act routine with him and give him a little training. And boom, he's got all the mobility you want, in the entire scene. And Howard, just kind of fell out of his chair and said, yes, that's what we'll do. So in that way, yeah, and that was the way we thought of it from then on. Even when we did the Broadway revival, I had all kinds of other ideas. Oh, we can do this and this, and I can, I kind of went crazy dreaming large about all the other things we could do. We ended up doing it exactly the same way as we did, because it's just foolproof.
Right. And it works.
And it's a funny gag. Whether you get the gag or not, it works. Yeah. So there were things like that, and yeah, I had a certain amount of input. We can do this. It can be this big. If it's this big, how do we fit it onto the set? And I worked with Edward Gianfrancesco, who was the set designer, very closely on how the plant interfaced and interacted with the set, especially with some of the smaller venues we were in, with the WPA Theater and the Orpheum Theater, which have very limited backstage space. We had to figure out how to make the plants massive and still be able to move backstage. Stuff like that.
That's incredible. So then, the show kind of blows up, and you've still, as you mentioned, continued to work and mentor people and sometimes help out with the plants and such. But at the same time, that show was really kind of coming onto the scene. You're also taking on more responsibility at Sesame Street at the same time. Can you talk about what it was like sort of living those two different lives? Because, they're obviously, the subject material is very different. Some of the skill sets are the same. But what was that time like for you?
That was a very, very busy, very exciting time. I was doing Sesame Street was actually longer then. Back then we did 110 episodes a year. Yeah. These days we do 35 episodes, but 110 episodes takes 5-6 months to shoot. So we were shooting on an extended schedule, usually all fall, part of the spring. So there was there one year when I was doing Sesame all day long, and then I had a heart out for getting downtown to the Orpheum Theater, and then when the puppeteers on Sesame are doing Avenue Q, we had a group back then that had a hard out when we were doing Little Shop on Broadway, we had hard outs. What then all that means is you got to end your shooting day at a certain time so we can make half hour. And those years were, a bit of a blur because I didn't do a lot of sleeping and my energy output was massive. And I would eat dinner after Little Shop of Horrors at about 1 a.m. And, and then get up at about 6 a.m. And I was, in a new relationship. Ellen Green and I were just getting started then, which was, a wonderful, exhausting relationship. That was a very interesting time. And it was lovely doing Sweetness and Light and Sesame and Education during the day, and then do Mayhem and Murder at nighttime. And during those times, I was also, I would go to England in the spring and work for a couple of months on Spitting Image, a political satire show that was there, which was also great fun. Those were lovely times.
It's like the puppeteer's equivalent of, I remember hearing when Michael J. Fox was shooting Back to the Future, he was also working on Family Ties at the same time, and they would basically throw him in a limo. He'd be able to sleep for the 10 minutes of the car ride, and just have these different things happening at once. That's crazy.
Every time I sat down, I slept. And I actually developed, actually back in my touring days, I developed the ability to sleep anywhere, anytime. And I'm going to show one of my older daughters actually has a sleep disorder. So she has trouble sleeping. And, we talk about it, it's hard to fathom somebody who, can't sleep without, certain exact, situations or white noise and, and all this things that she needs, that she still can't sleep very well. Whereas I could close my eyes right here and put my head down and be asleep in a few minutes. Anyway, back I just slept all the time, when I, during downtime. Doing Sesame actually kept me from doing some of the Little Shop of Horrors things. Originally, I really wanted to do the London production. I did New York. I took it to L.A. And then passed them off to other puppeteers. But I really wanted to do London with Ellen. But they delayed the production until it coincided with Sesame. And I love Sesame. It's make no mistake. It's made a massive difference in my life too, and I just love it. But it has my commitment to that show has kept me from doing other things. And it's not something I regret. It's just the nature of the business. So I sent Anthony Asbury to London. Who was my partner and understudy at the Orpheum, and he did the London show, and then ended up doing the Frank Oz feature film lead puppetry many years later, when they did the feature film. And then when we got the Broadway show, I brought Anthony, who was married and had a couple of kids then, back to the States to do the Broadway show. So it's been a whole circle, and so I couldn't work on the feature film either, but I went there and I was there for a lot of it, but just kind of as moral support.
Yeah, just overseeing things.
I didn't have, it was Lyle Conway did the puppets for the film, which were just, of course, I mean, you've seen it. It's just they're just wonderful and brilliant. As some smart person said, the puppets for that film, for Little Shop of Horrors, are the last great rubber monsters. Right after that, CG started coming in, and which meant that you could do anything. But the puppets in that film are cable, rubber, people pulling levers, people. It's the last great rubber monster.
I keep hearing rumors that they might be making another movie soon.
Those rumors are going around.
Yeah.
with Josh Gad and
I heard about that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
and the girl from Pitch Perfect, the Australian girl with Dakota.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like,
Yeah, that'd be wild. It'd be interesting to what direction they take it. I hope they don't have too much CGI in it. There's still a lot of practical effects in it to do it.
I said to them, I had my agent send them a nice letter of introduction saying, hi, if you want, if you want a consultation, I'll even build the darn things if you want. But if you want a through line from the original production, I'm available, to be paid massive amounts of money and just sit there and consult. I never heard back from him. So I know. I wish him luck. But I kind of like the original film. I think Frank Oz did a fantastic job. And once they released the director's cut, which was the proper ending, I was totally happy after that. And and all the popularity that I've heard that the director's cut has been enjoying is kind of vindicating for Howard's original vision, and goodness, and Frank Oz's original vision too. It was just the vision of the dumb audiences that were seeing it, and we need to have a happy ending. Seymour and Audrey and Seymour can't die. Of course they can die. It's a Faustian bargain. They lost. They die. Anyway.
Well, so do you mind if we talk a little bit more Sesame?
You can talk anything you want. Honestly, I got no secrets. Well, no, I got one secret, but you'll never even guess what that is.
Fair enough. Well, we'll start with I guess we'll start with Snuffy, since that was sort of the first character you started on. Could you talk to us a little bit about who he is? Because I think a lot of people in their mind, they say, oh, that's the Sesame Street elephant, or they see it as sort of a one-note, maybe Big Bird's sidekick, but I'm sure you have to have a whole backstory to be able to bring him to life. So can you tell us a little bit about Snuffy, who he is to you?
Yeah, Snuffy is a lovely character. His backstory, it's a character I took over from Jerry Nelson. So, I started with, that information, the information that Jerry started with the character, and of course the writers and Jim Henson and all the people who conceived of the character, and then, have kind of evolved it from that point, both personally and of course, the writer, everything evolves on the show. The nature of Sesame is we keep getting, we keep changing with the times. I was going to say we keep getting better, and we do get better. But and sometimes we skew this way or that, and you like it or you don't. But we really are doing the best we can with being an effective educational tool for today's kids. And with all of that in mind, Snuffy is, he's of course part of that, but he's such a sweet character. I love, the whole idea of inhabiting another character and crawling into a character's skin metaphorically. Well, you don't do that with Snuff. I mean, you crawl in literally. It's not a metaphor. The zipper opens up and I crawl inside and I get in. As soon as I get in him, there's a switch. There's a thing that puppeteers, I'm sure actors, everyone in any business could do this. You could go into your electronics mind. You could go into your accounting mind. There's a little part of my mind which is just Snuffy, and I plug into that, and all of his attitudes and beliefs and things he can understand and things he can't understand, they're all right there. It's a little, I think of it as a little, compartment of my head. I love the buddy relationship with Bird. He's a character he's simpler, than some of the other characters I've done. He's got certain blinders. There's certain things he can see, certain things he can't see. He can't see Oscar's grouchiness and sometimes cruelty. He just has blinders to that, which is interesting. In my life, I've put on blinders to certain things, to certain people, to ill effect. So I as much as I try to stay open and sweet in my personal life, I've got a lot more suspicions and I'm a lot more wary in my real life than poor Snuffy is. But I look out for him. Does that answer your question at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to talk about the technical stuff in just a second, but I'm curious how, in your mind, it's been difficult over the years to make something that large so vulnerable.
So portable, you said?
Yeah, because he's just such a sweet, lovable character, and obviously an easy inclination for something that big would just to make him, these broad strokes, and you really have a nuance to him, and I wasn't sure if that was something difficult for you to find when you started out.
No, it's the nuances of a character that, what does they say, God is in the details, but they also say God is in the broad strokes. It's just, I love the details of a character and the subtleties. And and one of the things you learn working on television is when, and especially puppetry on television, when the camera pulls back, you go big. And when the camera comes in, you go subtle. Now, if you go really big when you got a tight shot, you'll just blow it out visually. So that stuff is tailored to how it's shot. But the depth and the nuance and the little quirks of a character, those are the little things that make them real. I mean, just the breath. You don't think about a character breathing, but when Snuffy breathes or takes a big sigh and stops and thinks, you believe that he's breathing. He's not breathing. It's just an illusion. When he stops and looks down and, ponders something, he's not thinking. I am. And I'm not really thinking because I know what's happening. There's part of me that's totally living in Snuffy's reality at that moment and being, a proper actor. But there's also the puppeteer, director, entrepreneur side of me that sees the whole picture and has a whole plan and knows every line from the beginning of the script to the end of the script, at any point. And I'm controlling the effect, moment to moment while I'm living it. It's puppetry. It's you work from the inside out and from the outside in, and they meet at this strange, wonderful place in the middle.
I love it. So talking about going from outside into him, can you describe just a little bit for people who maybe don't know about the technical elements of that character, of performing him, and also, the part of the reason I think that Jerry stopped performing him was he kind of blew out his back, and you did something significant when you took him over to allow you to continue doing it for so long.
When Jerry Nelson quit the character, he had hurt his back doing it, and it's it is lighter than it appears, but it still is not light. I mean, he appears massive, and they did a wonderful job making it light, but still, it's nothing to mess around with. So what I did, excuse me.
Do you know how much it weighs?
I don't know.
Just curious.
What I should do is put him on a scale and then subtract my weight from it, and then a certain amount of the weight is shared by the back and So even though I have more of the weight in front, I'm in actually a stronger position to carry it because I'm standing upright and I've a bend with the legs and my back is straight. The guy in the back has less weight, but he has to actually curve his back to fit in there. Bryant Young, who's been doing it longer than I have, is my partner in Snuffy. So when I took over the character and knew that Jerry had hurt his back, I adjusted the weight so that there was very little weight on my spine, and I shifted most of the weight to my hips. It's a Steadicam backpack, so it's all kind of aluminum, and you can adjust it, according to your body. So I made a cinch it really, really snugly around my hips, which puts everything on my legs. And then I use my upper body to shift his upper body focus. But I would say only, maybe 30% of the weight is on my spine and shoulders, just enough to control it, but not the heavy lifting. That's what's one of the things that has kept me in good shape all these years. Plus, I work out and warm up every time, especially these days.
It's a warm up routine.
Yeah, I've got a whole warm up routine before I strap them on. I can do most of the same things I could do when I was 28. I just have to warm up first.
Well, there's a lot of technical things inside him. So how do you? Because it looks back and forth. He blinks. His trunk moves, and the mouth, and of course the manipulation of the head itself. So how do you juggle all those things? Like, what's it like in there? Is it like pulleys and stuff, or is it mostly physical?
For those listening in their car, this is a good time to switch to the video version because he's demonstrating for us.
Let's see. Let me just. This is Annie's.
There's a couple of them just littered through there.
My dear wife has, I think, 9, maybe 12 Emmys. So Snuffy is. I got a long. I'm in a stance here. I work his mouth with this hand. I'm ambidextrous, so this really helps. I'm actually left-handed. So the lip sync is with the left hand here. Looking at the cam. The mouth, the eyes are on a little bar. Look left, look right, blink, blink, blink. The head is controlled by my upper body in this way, where, in opposition to where my legs are, basically. And then I reach down here, and there's basically just a curved plastic rod tube. I twist that, and the trunk will kind of do that, and I can twist it up and move it back and forth so I can get this type of movement. So I shift from working the eyes to working the snuffle, and it's kind of an illusion where I'll pick a point of focus with the eyes, and then I'll continue it with my body so it looks like he's still looking around, and I'll pick up the snuffle and move it into place. So it's the illusion of the eyes and the trunk working at the same time. It's it just all kind of works together.
Yeah. You're making 1 + 1 = 4.
Yeah, and I don't really even have to hardly think about it anymore. It's I love the analogy of 88 keys on a piano, even though I haven't got anywhere near 88. But if you're thinking about where your fingers go on this finger on this key, if you're thinking about that, you're not making music. It might sound like something that some composer wrote, but it won't be music because you're thinking about it, and when you can, and what's coming across is the effort of matching fingers and body parts to to a keyboard. What they need to do to make the music. Your hands. You feel the music, you read and it comes out. And it's the same way with puppets. The technique is something you work on, master, and then forget. So that when I climb into Snuffy, my hands go where they need to go, and they do what they need to do. But what I'm doing is I'm just thinking Snuff.
And being inside him's got to be obviously very different than doing a character like Telly. I imagine when he's interacting with other hand puppets, you probably lean on them a little bit to do more of the maneuvering around the space, do you? Or is it, by now you're just so used to it that it doesn't even faze you?
Well, he can't. For instance, he can't pick up things particularly easily. I mean, if he wants to pick something up, we have to rig it. He can touch things. He can knock things over. He can, ruffle somebody's hair. I can hold things in my mouth. I can kick things. I can run into things. I've run into a lot of things. I can trample people. But any manipulation, we would rely either on a practical handed puppet or a human. Any puppet is written and performed to its strengths. You do what you do best. And a director, if he's got Snuffy and Bird in a shot, you might want to think about wide shots as opposed to super close-ups. And playing to their friendship and to the movement of the characters, that type of stuff.
And then one last question on Snuffy. In terms of seeing out of it, do you have a monitor? I know you can see out of the mouth, but are you using the same kind of thing that what Carol or Matt would use inside Big Bird?
Both, yeah.
Okay.
You have to have a monitor because it's all about the monitor. It's all about we have to tailor our performance to what is seen from the outside. In the studio, it's to what the director and the cameraman see, but what it truly is what the kids at home see, and if you're trying to make a personal connection to the children of the world, you have to nail them with your focus. You're looking here, you're looking here, you're looking here, you're looking here. Even something probably reads as subtle as on this computer camera. If I'm looking right at the camera now, and now I'm not. Now I am. Now I'm not. It's all the difference. Makes all the difference to a kid watching, which is he's telling the truth. He's just another lying adult. Somebody just trying who can't look me in the eye, who's trying to sell me something. So without a camera to let us know exactly where the kid's heart is, you think, on purpose it's the focus in the eye, but what you're really doing is making a connection, a personal connection. And without the monitor, that's impossible. Plus, the puppeteer is composing the shot minute to minute and playing with all the cuts and, who you're looking at and cheating the camera and what looks like you're looking at somebody and what doesn't. The camera is key. But as soon as I go off camera, I'm blind, and I see out the mouth. And the mouth also helps, in case a child has moved in front of me that I haven't seen or is below camera or off camera, safety issues require, if a cable is there or if somebody's moved a piece of furniture or a box or a child has cut in on me, I've got to be able to see that, whether there's a camera on me or not, just for safety. And we've crashed and burned enough in Snuffy to know, to take that seriously.
Leave that.
Something else I'm thinking of, again, kind of going back to you being inside there and other characters being outside of their puppets. Is there, because they don't necessarily know exactly what you're going through minute by minute, whereas you can see it on the other puppeteer's face if they're exhausted or if they're in an awkward position. Is that ever, a problem or something that people have to, check in with you on? Because you're kind of, in a big sleeping bag, no one can really see what you're physically, how you are in there.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. People they just see Snuff.
Yeah.
And if Snuff is looking off, for instance, and they're talking to, and then they're giving me direction, and if Snuffy is looking in the other direction, I've had directors say, can you look at me when I talk to you? Say, I am. I'm in here, thanks. I put my hand, up the mouth and, shake their hands. Yeah, there's a person in here. I keep very close control about what's happening in the room, about who is where, and I've learned how to identify people and locations audially. Plus, I'll lean back, open the mouth, and I'll take a good look at the room, and I'll make kind of a mental map of the room in my head, which makes it dangerous if somebody moves something. So I kind of know where I can walk and where I can't walk. When they give directions, for instance, Barkley the dog, when he was on the show, he always had an electric fan, which would blow into his mouth. And they tried to give me that, and I said no, because I can't scope out what's happening in the studio. I can't get directions. I can't hear people's comments. I can't find out who has a problem, who has a cool idea. I got to be able to read my fellow puppeteers and every creative technician in the room, at when it's happening. So they have fans, these big fans, and they fan the air when I run out of oxygen, which happens. You just start going to sleep. So, okay, I'm getting sleepy. Okay. And what that means is that there's no oxygen left in here. And I open my mouth and they come and pass some oxygen in. But that's, and it's totally quiet, so I can still scope the room out. And people are always surprised what I hear and what I don't hear. Private conversations happen, next to Snuffy all the time, and they think, I hear everything.
Well, actually, especially with your talent of being able to sleep anywhere, you probably get away with that a little bit.
Never fallen asleep inside Snuffy. I have almost passed out inside Snuffy, and I actually have passed out inside Plant, a Little Shop of Horrors, back before we realized how to get some air in there. So yeah, passing out is different from falling asleep.
Sure. So when there are scenes with Snuffy and Big Bird, do those have to be more choreographed because of some of those limitations?
You have to take their size into account, and say, no, we're not people. We're on your side. We see what you see. You've got to think of these things in terms of the the
scale. Yeah. If it's just one of those, just Snuffy walking out, other characters can kind of perform around him to an extent. Whereas if it's just Bird and Snuffy, that it's really, you guys, you've been doing it for so long together as well, that you got to really be on the same page.
Oh yeah. But we're watching the monitor. We're watching each other's movements. We miscalculate sometimes. We try to take into account the depth problems, the lack of depth perception, and sometimes we'll miscalculate that and run into each other. But one of the beauties of the designs of Snuffy and Bird is that they are, on camera, they're puppeteerless and they're cordless. Nothing, you can shoot them wide and free. There's no puppeteers down below. There's no monitors down below. There's no cords trailing from our backsides. So you can shoot us clean with any human, with as wide a camera as you can get. God, I love taking Snuffy outside. We had him down in the village. Early this spring, we shot something. We were shooting
those car commercials.
Some car commercial. It was a car commercial. And yeah, Snuffy was down on Wooster and Green and West Broadway. And they just, we were just shooting him. And then we crossed the street and a policeman stopped the traffic, and it was all the people, trying to get onto the Holland Tunnel. And, you know, he just simply just crossed the street, and, you know, and the camera follows him, and it was just a thing of beauty I just wanted to go around the entire block.
Yeah, really bringing puppets into the real world. I love it. So then for Telly, who, you know, is just such a great, funny character, can you talk about him a little bit? Because it seems like he's sort of like your real darling of you know, sort of your favorite one to perform on
Yes. Yeah, he's absolutely my favorite. And what makes him my favorite is that he you know, he's got a very wide range of responses, and he's a complex character, and he's got a very deep and dark backstory, and you know, and he's you know, he's a wonderful, complex little guy. My favorite thing about Telly is when he goes deeply into his angst. Now, I always say, as long as I have Telly, I'll never need, you know, deep psychoanalysis, because he's my, you know, my safety valve for all the crazy stuff in my head. But when I can get a kid to say, "Oh, Telly, you know, calm down, it'll be okay. You know, it's not that bad, and here's why." And kids have so many concerns and fears, and, you know, the world can seem to be a dangerous place at times, and a little complex, and if I can just get a kid to say, you know, calm down, you'll be okay. I know I've done something, you know, something useful. To exhibit a character who is so deeply into concern and fear and possible outcomes and ramifications that he almost becomes immobile. Anyway, and to have a character who cares that much, who truly cares that much, and, you know, and part of the nature of his character is he can care about almost anything, and kind of on the turn of a dime too, and it's never false. And he cares about this, and, you know, and then he cares about this, and it's neither one of them is false. He just encompasses that much energy. You know, he's not a character for the faint of heart. He's not a snuggly character. He's not particularly safe. You know, it's one of the reasons why you know, we're not using him quite so much anymore. You know, he's a little you know, he's not your safe, cuddly Muppet character. He's you know, he's a little out there, and I think that's where he's useful, and that's also where he's annoying to some characters.
Yeah, I think about. I remember when you guys did the hurricane episodes many years ago. He played a great role in that, seeming just worried about every little thing, and, you know, he'd carry the pinwheel around with, and the wind started coming. He was worried that something else would happen. So, yeah, that's really true. What would you say, Pam Arciero, who's been right-handing him for so long, what if anything can you say that she brings to Telly's character, or just your comfort in performing him?
Pam and I are dear friends. We actually auditioned together back in '81. It was because of working with Pam that I, you know, probably got the job, because we clicked right away, and we were funny together. And the scene that we did for Jim Henson, you know, it had a spark in it, and I think whatever spark it had, it was you know, it was the relation. It was Pam's and my relationship, which started that day, and, you know, continues to stay. she's a wonderful performer and a dear friend. When you're working with somebody that long, you don't have to plan out what you're going to do, which is nice after all these years. To have that level of trust, both personally, emotionally, and professionally. We're partners with Telly. Without her, he's not. I do him. I can do him, and he's Telly, and he's fun, but he's not complete without Pam. It's become. We've done it so many thousands of times that it's she's in his DNA. And conversely, I love doing Grungetta's right hand. Which I'm Pam's perfect assistant, and I try to get her her rhythms in my body, and try to be as good for her as she is for me. It's really nice to do that trade off.
It goes hand in hand.
Sorry.
No, it's good. That's very good.
I have a question about his design, and maybe this is just how you performed him, or I don't know if the puppet changed at all, but when he was performed by Brian Neal, and then I think maybe for the first couple of years that you had him, he sort of seemed to have what I'd call like a beaker mouth, like it was sort of a permanent frown on him that seemed to go away over the years. Was that just in how you manipulated him, or do you remember, was there a change in the puppet construction? Because that seemed to give a lot to his evolution as a character over the years.
Yeah, when I right-handed for Telly Monster for at least 4 years with the brilliant Brian Neal, who it took when Brian left the show, it took 5 puppeteers to cover his range of characters that he was doing on the show, which was Barkley, Telly, Elmo, Buster, Slimy, human characters, massive amount of characters. Dr. Nobel Price, he had a dozen major characters, which took me, Pam, Kevin, and several others to cover. So when I took over, he was a little bit more depressive back then. He was one of his uses was as Oscar's whipping boy, which when you think of it is not real good modeling for kids. I love Oscar, and I love his attitude and the grouchiness, and and the heart of gold, shining through the cracks. But that was abuse, plain and simple. Some of the stuff that was going on back then, which is why when you get some of the Sesame, what's called old school tapes, from they have a little warning on it. Warning: this material is not proper for children.
Right? Really? Well, and it's not up to today's standards of what is appropriate. It's not that they were ever cursing.
Sure, of course. But I didn't know that they did that. They put those disclaimers.
Oh, yeah, it was a big controversy when those first started coming out because everyone.
Well, Oscar would call Big Bird stupid. Right. That was okay, and he would say "shut up." Simple things like that. If I was Oscar, I would probably just swear a blue streak all the time just to really clear the street. But we never did that. Well, not on camera.
Sure.
So what were we talking about?
Telly's either design change or
yeah. So there was we did he did get got a bit of a facelift. We built a new Telly. Paul Hardis actually built a new Telly, and they couldn't. I was there working with him. There was a pattern for it, but the pattern had been adjusted and changed for so many years, little tucks and little nips, that the pattern was just a starting point. and he had to go in and really finesse the thing. And I wouldn't say he was built with more of a smile, but I performed him with more of a range. He wasn't just depressive, and he wasn't just a victim. And he and the way you perform a puppet, you can make it seem like it's frowning or seem like it's neutral or smiling even. It's an illusion, but it's how we use the fabric and the puppet to increase the range of what was possible for him. So he became a more positive character over the years, and that was one of those things that we evolved slowly.
So one last Sesame question, then I really want to move on and talk about the O'Neill and the Halloween project. But
Okay.
One special that I always loved and have grown to appreciate more as I've grown up, just knowing the logistics of everything, is the Don't Eat the Pictures. When you guys seem to just have like the run of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, can you talk about that and like if there were any limitations or safety concerns that you had to do as you guys ran Big Bird and Snuffy around like crazy art?
We had the run of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We had the run of it. I don't remember any security guards there at all.
You could fit a lot of paintings inside Snuffy.
Yeah.
We ran roughshod over that place. No, it's Sesame. We were respectful.
Sure.
But my recollection is that we had the run of the place, and it was summer, and we shot at nighttime. We started setting up at closing, and we would shoot all night. For a couple of weeks, I think we were there. So yeah, I've never looked at the Metropolitan Museum the same, because now there's people there and there's guards there, and you can't touch anything. And I'm not saying we touched all the paintings. But it was being there and having that amount of trust placed in us, and I would say we didn't abuse the trust, but it was nice. It was great just running around there. That was before Snuffy was mainstreamed. He was still not seen by the adults. He was never imaginary, of course, but he was very shy. So he was still. It was just him and Bird, and then the little kid that was in the show. And I wasn't actually. That was before I was doing Telly. Brian Neal was still doing Telly back then.
Okay, yeah.
So and then they were actually shooting, I think, Muppets Take Manhattan out at Silver Cup Studios while we were shooting that. So the puppeteers would go back and forth. But we were there. And I remember it was just all the air conditioning would go off, and it was hot and dark. But Fritz Weaver was there, and James Mason was there, and that was a fun shoot.
That's very cool. Yeah, one of those special things that I think even sort of like Little Shop that doesn't seem like it'll ever be able to happen again. It's just this nice little time capsule of Sesame Past.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you for that insight. So, would love to talk about the O'Neill now, which obviously you've participated in the National Puppetry Conference quite a bit at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center. That's how we've had the pleasure of meeting and working together sometimes. So, let's just start how you even found out about that place and how you got started there.
I started at the O'Neill, actually the first year. It was Bart Rockerburton who teaches the course at university at UConn and stores had a program up there, which had folded, and they were thinking of something else they could do there with puppetry because of the history of puppetry there with Rufus and Margot Rose helping them put the whole thing together with George White at the very, very beginning. So they were trying to figure out how to have some puppetry presence there. So it was kind of an experimental thing. We did it with George Latshaw and Jane Henson, and they decided to do kind of a Muppet style workshop. Puppets, it was actually Muppets for television, Muppet style. And I don't know if back then they were thinking of it as an ongoing thing, or whether it was a one-off, or whether it was, so let's do this and see if it flies at all. So I was involved with the first year, or when they tried it out, which was a combination of people building a basic Muppet style pattern and then working on the performing. And they had some wonderful builders from the workshop running the building aspect of it, and then it was Kathy Mullen and Pam Arciero and myself doing the performing part of that. So that was the first O'Neill, and then they decided it kind of worked, and decided to steer away from Muppet style and go more towards experimental, some more classic American styles. And then it evolved from there. But and I was involved. I've been there most years. There have been years when I haven't gone, usually because I'm working or shooting something during that time. But I've been a guest artist there a number of times. I mean, how the whole thing works. I mean, the format and the process, and then that has evolved over the years from, one guest artist. Everyone who signs up works with that guest artist. That's it. And then it evolved into the marionette side, the marionette performing, the marionette building, the individual projects, which was super important to the great George Latshaw, who really wanted every performer who came up there to exercise their own unique individual creativity, and he invented the system where that could happen. And then there have been more tracks and opportunities added over the years. There's still guest artist projects, but the thing has evolved into some really interesting things, interesting ways, and I've been involved with a lot of that over the years.
That's great. Yeah, and two of your, I think, most well-known tracks that you do is the Video Anarchy and the Puppet Anarchy, which comes back every couple of years. You're pushing the limits of different things. But we really wanted to talk, this being one of our October Halloween episodes, is your biggest project, the Halloween project. Or it's now called All Hallows Eve. Is that wonderful? Which you did a Henson residency, as well as back in 2013 was a guest artist. So can you tell us kind of where that came from a little bit?
It was
Halloween.
It was it's very much born out of what I was talking about originally about my original love for Halloween. I had been working on this project earlier, and then and I started developing it. And I remember if Pam asked me to. We had done some other things, other guest artist projects there. I did Jack Straw's Wind Tunnel there, and we did Pigeonholed, thing that Annie wrote, and then I started developing the Halloween project and did that in 2013, just one scene from it, about 20 minutes worth. And from that, I started developing the whole piece. I started with one key scene, and then wrote a beginning and an end and the whole thing. So it was my kind of foray into writing my, a real piece of the, it's a musical, and on the lyrics, and, I've been, it's been, all consuming, kind of almost the project of a lifetime. We did a 2-week residency at the O'Neill, which Preston Whiteway was so generous to work out, and I got the greatest cast ever to come up for 2 weeks and to just get this thing on its feet, and we did, and it worked like a charm. So now I'm working on finding a home for it for 2019. Halloween 2019. We've got meetings with theaters next week and backers next week, and the website. My website is now all full of all Hallows Eve stuff. We still need to get the video clip up there and a bunch of the songs, but it's really become the main project that I think about night and day now.
When you started writing that, did it start off as written, or did you kind of start off with character designs and kind of build the story?
Started out written.
Started out completely written, yeah, because those characters are beautiful.
It started out as I had the opportunity to work with a giant pipe organ, is where it started at some I forget what school it was, Juilliard or somebody had a massive pipe organ and they were going to allow me to alter it, to add on to it, and I had the ideas of putting lights inside the tubes, and introducing smoke, and having the pipe organ itself become a show, and a kind of a puppet stage, and so that the music that was being played was also being seen visually. That was how the whole idea started, and then it kind of it emerged from that. Okay, what do we need an organ for? Who's playing the organ? How do they get to that? And now the organ is actually a very, very small part of it. It's just there's a wild blues number that the main character sings and plays on this. But it's evolved, I would like to think, into something dramatically meaningful, not just a massive special effect, which was the way I was first thinking of it.
Was it difficult, as someone who came from a writer and performance and building background, to really have to dig down deep into like the story structure and really being able to, I don't want to say fight the impulse to just make really cool puppets, but I think a lot of puppeteers think about the puppets that they have to build first, rather than serving the actual story that they want to tell. Was there a struggle at all in there, or what was that process?
The process of wanting to build cool puppets is something that all puppeteers have to deal with, because we all love our stuff. We love building our things. I happen to be married to a fabulous writer who actually, before we were even together, she was consulting on the first show I did, that actually up at the O'Neill. Actually, this whole evolutionary thing, the organization of matter from the first Big Bang, actually before the first Big Bang, to the ultimate destruction of the universe and everything in between. Just a small story.
Yeah.
And I had built this is the object lesson, which I always keep firmly in mind. I built what I call the crystal spider, which had a clear sphere for a body and beautiful acrylic legs, and there were LED lights at the tips of the little legs and at his knees, and pulsing LEDs inside the body with a little beating heart that would beat, and it was just this gorgeous marionette that would it was just creepy and weird and beautiful. And it was, and I would bring it out, and I showed it to Annie, and she said, "Oh, how does it further the story?" And I said, "It took me 5 weeks to build it." I said, "No, what does it do? I mean, how does, and I said, "Well, it does this. It's just pretty. It's all it is. It doesn't, there's no reason for it to exist, in the plot." And so I hung it over the door of the theater, and we did the show. So it's become, the crystal spider has become my, my little mnemonic device to remind myself of why you don't do that.
Is a post-it note above your computer screen. Crystal spider.
That should become a term. No, that's the crystal spider of the story.
Yeah.
We gotta,
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's great.
So and it's something that, with puppeteers, rears its ugly head all the time. But I was very, very careful, and I don't, I don't like building things just for the sake of building things to a specific purpose and a specific dramatic purpose. So I didn't overbuild on the Halloween project at all. It's, everything is born out of the plot and out of the script and out of the development of the characters. I can say that fairly honestly without wincing too much.
Yeah, you used some interesting techniques there, because you had a bunch of pulleys and bungees to keep, because the scale of those were tremendous.
Did you see the show?
Oh yeah. We were at the O'Neill that year.
When I did it the first time.
We didn't see the residency version.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Adam
that's the one that I saw.
That's your first year at the O'Neill.
Okay.
Yeah, because they were just so beautiful and everything about it. But they were almost, in a way, set pieces. The way they were kind of attached to the barn, and a lot of bungees and stuff coming down. What made you decide to go into that direction versus it being a really big, almost costumed rig or something like that?
The rig was limiting. The first time I did it in 2003, I loved a lot of the movement, but the way we did it at the residency in February was a lot freer. You had a lot more movement. I cut out the things that were holding us back, that weren't working so well, and but it still is. It's a heavy thing, and it's big. It's 15, 16 feet tall. So it's not something, what I've done with the bungees is kind of zeroed out his weight so that several people just by holding it fairly loosely can move him into position. So he's got all that wonderful mass that makes him look big and dangerous and ponderous, but none of the heavy lifting for the puppeteers. It worked out a lot better. But I still need that stomach wrenching size at that point to put the lead girl into some extreme jeopardy at that which is the turning point of the whole plot.
It's so cool how these humongous puppets have kind of followed you every way of your puppetry career, in a way, from Little Shop to Sesame Street to your own personal work. It's really interesting.
And the next show I do is going to be a sock puppet. I did a workshop with Ronnie Burkett, the brilliant performer, writer, marionettist from Canada. I took his class at the O'Neill summer before last, writing, page to stage, he called it. Write something, and then you work on it, and then you build something, and then you perform it. It was a sock puppet basically, and I just loved the simplicity, the challenge of producing All Hallows Eve, in the theater is, it's got to be a big space. It's got to be a flexible space. It turned out when we did the residency that it's an audience immersive kind of moving audience thing. Cam, you would love the way we used the barn. We audience met in the lobby, which was all tricked out with kind of as a sinister foyer with old lamps and dark lighting and flickering lighting and strange little things set up and children's masks and entrails, and it was creepy. And then we led them upstairs to the balcony, and the whole place started at the corner of the balcony by the stairway, and then led them across the balcony to the stairway on the other side of the barn. And then when they went down that stairway on the other side, then they were entering basically the witch's lair. So there was so the audience is moving this whole entire time. And then
I didn't realize that about the residency. That's incredible.
It was so much fun just using the heck out of that barn and finding ways of doing little practical lighting areas, things that and the lighting grid where we could, and my spotlight where we needed to. We smoked the whole place. We got permission to smoke it from the fire department. We ran tests, and so the room was very hazy and very dark, with very specific lights. It was a lot of fun. It was basically these pools of light in this infinite sea of blackness, and then we would do lightning and just light up the entire dome of the entire interior barn. We got some massive strobe lights and speakers, and just blew the place out with light and thunder. And at points where we needed reasons to why the kids couldn't leave and had to stay in this dangerous place. And then the rest of the action moved around the entire barn, and so that the main characters that were rigged on the bungees, the audience came to them, when it was time, and they had big black cloth over them, which the witch rips down at the when it's revealed, and but up to then they were there, but unobtrusive. So any other theater that I find it in now, I'm thinking of, all right, can I use the lobby? Can I use this hallway? Can I use the stairway? Can I rip out all the seats in the theater and move the audience through there? Can I put the chairs on rotate them to face different directions? Anyway, I'm thinking of theater spaces very flexibly these days.
I can imagine so. So you mentioned a little bit with working with Ronnie, and I know a couple years ago, I think at the 25th, you participated in the Strand with Hugo and Inez. And can you talk a little bit about, it's so wonderful for, I know, a lot of our cohort to see you coming back as a student and really trying to continue to learn. But at this point that you've been doing puppetry for so long, are there ever things that you need to either unlearn or sort of break about your understanding so that you could continue to absorb these new things, or what's that been like for you?
Well, you've got to stay open to learning new things. I mean, anyone who thinks they know everything, they're just kidding themselves. That there's just an ego problem there. So yeah, I mean, when I heard that Hugo and Inez were coming, I saw their show back at the Henson International Festival, and they were just brilliant performers, funny and poignant and everything, and just original. It's just, you've never seen anything like that. So yeah, you want to work with those people. I want to know how their minds work. I want to spend time in the same room with them. So yeah, I just I stepped out of my instructor persona and became a student, and as open and good and possibly be. And the same with Ronnie Burkett. When I saw his shows, just blew me away. This is what he was doing. And when Pam finally got him to come, and then he got excited about the O'Neill and the whole idea. And as you know, he's been kind of got bit by the O'Neill bug and came back and did that brilliant show this past year, where for the first time, he wasn't performing a one-man show that he wrote, alone. He was working with a big ensemble of people and in a very, very different way.
Right.
And
we had Jean Marie on a couple of weeks ago, and she talked about producing that, and she gave a great little insight into that show. That was great.
Yeah. Did you see it?
I didn't get a chance to go out there this year. I really, really wanted to, but it wasn't in the cards.
Yeah, it was really something. So when you get a chance, to work with something like that, you have to take it. I'm trying on the idea of being a writer. I mean, I would never call myself a writer yet. And yet I wrote All Hallows Eve, which is, and I rewrote it, and and I'm, I've got a revising copy that I carry with me everywhere. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I am a writer, but I think I would have to write a lot more stuff to be a writer. I've written like one or two things. But I want to be better at everything I do. That's one of the nice things, kind of, harkening back to Sesame too. Nobody's complacent at Sesame Street. Puppeteers aren't complacent. We work on our technique. We work on the characters and the relationships, and we support each other and make suggestions and give each other notes. This didn't work so well. This was great. It was the interdynamics between the performers have made us all much better than we would have been on our own. And once you see how that model works, and how puppeteers are so often in our own little space, in our own little, with our own little blinders, this is how it's done, and every other way sucks. When you realize, you just more is better, more information is better. And so, you want to be a creative creature of the world, and not of one tiny little space.
Well, we appreciate you taking a moment for us to sit in your presence and share some of this. I know a lot of our listeners are going to be really excited to hear what you've had to say. But as we wrap up, the name of the show is called Puppeteers, which I'm sure you've heard Jim Krupa talk about in the past, this autobiography that he wants to work on. He was our first guest on the show. And we kind of end every episode with having a puppeteer talk about their favorite or sort of craziest story about a time when something like went wrong, either on set or on stage, with some puppetry stuff.
Something that would have given you puppet tears.
Something that went wrong.
Something crazy. Get people caught on fire. We had things falling on people, and
we were shooting a video for Treasure Island, and the puppets actually lit on fire. It wasn't doing a little shop of horrors. When we did a little shop of horrors in Florida, our hydraulic lifter that lifted the whole thing up exploded and shot hydraulic fluid all over the stage. That was a lot of fun. Passing out inside the number 3 puppet in Little Shop of Horrors and having him just fall over on stage was great fun. I've fallen. What?
Did they stop the show when that happened? Like, what went?
I think
They just got some smelling salt.
Did they just kind of shake it around till you woke up?
I think when I passed out. I think I came to, and I'd blown the puppet moving thing, but it kind of looked like what it was, which was a puppet fainting, and I think we moved on just fine with that. Terrible things. Oh goodness. Tim Lagasse popped his kneecap on Allegra's window when we were down at Nickelodeon Studios. It went right to the side of his leg, and he flipped it around. That was a rough day. Pam Marciero caught her finger in the door and ripped her fingernail off one day. Oh, it's let's see what.
Has anything ever happened with like a? You don't have to name the names, of course, but with like some celebrity or something that like.
Oh, we've got you got celebrities. And I shouldn't name names, but there have been celebrities on the show that you're really looking forward to. They come on and there's they'll. You get kept waiting for hours, and then they show up and they're not prepared, and we do our homework, and we work really fast. So we'll
video online of Joe Pesci spitting on Elmo at one point.
Yeah, Joe Pesci was interesting. I remember Mike Myers showed up for a bit, and he hadn't slept at all. He'd been up all night writing for Saturday Night Live, and we were doing a takeoff on Wayne's World called Telly's Town, and he was just half asleep. And I just remember we'll give you no quarter. I mean, if you're not there, we'll be kind, but but we'll eat you alive too. And so I think he realized very quickly that we were gonna, if he didn't wake up, we were gonna eat him alive. And then and he perked right up, and we had a great time. I've had such fun. I got to sing with Smokey Robinson, and laugh my butt off with John Goodman, and Telly looked up into Carly Simon's eyes, and she started crying because no one had ever looked that soulfully or that deeply into her eyes before. Ping pong ball. And, and as far as terrible things, oh God,
some pretty good stuff though. Yeah, we had plenty of tear-jerking moments.
As soon as we hang up, it's gonna come.
It's all gonna come to me. I was on stage one time as an actor, and they had it was a rake stage, and it was this turgid drama, very deep psychological drama, and they decided to polyurethane the stage beforehand, which was fine. It was all set supposedly until the lights started warming up the polyurethane, and as we were walking on the stage, pretty soon it starts going surface, and so you realize that it's getting louder and louder with every step you take, and then you realize if you don't step that your feet are sticky now, and then they start sticking to the polyurethane, and so if you don't step, the stage starts sticking to your feet, and then you can't move. So all the actors are going. And we made it to the intermission. They powder the floor, and they try to, and then it works for about 10 minutes, and then it really starts heating up, and to the point where every step you take, you start coming up with this big, huge sheet of polyurethane attached to your feet. And it was just, and the audience was going hysterical, and we were going hysterical. And And I always thought that was, that should have been, somebody should do something consciously, like that.
Right.
And since then, there have been wonderful plays like the play that goes wrong, and things like that. But that was probably the worst time I ever had on stage. I was in a one act also where the girl was nervous, so she took amphetamines beforehand, and so we finished 20-minute one act in about 4 or 5 minutes. That was crazy.
Oh my God.
One of my favorite things was not something I did. I saw a production. It was up at the O'Neill a long time ago, and I won't use names. But basically, a man was doing this shadow show for kids, and he was having a nervous breakdown while he was doing the show because everything was going wrong, and I started laughing during the show, and I went hysterical. I've never gone quite this hysterical in my life, I don't think. And I've always thought that it would be really interesting to do a show where to do, and when the show was over, I lifted my hand. I said, "Don't change it." That I wish I had the genius to produce this exact show consciously. And I've always kind of wanted to do that, to take this man's puppeteers and to turn it into the most riveting drama, because there's nothing more interesting than watching somebody have a nervous breakdown, on stage.
I think that's what that show Kidding is about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Showtime.
That's right.
That new Jim Carrey show where he's like Mr. Rogers or whatever.
I haven't seen that yet. I want to see that.
Yeah,
It's pretty interesting. Yeah.
I think my next show with me and a sock puppet is going to might be something like that. Me having a nervous breakdown.
Nice, I like it. So is there any way that people can follow you or find out about things you have coming up? If there's another Hallows Eve performance coming up?
Yeah, that'll all be on my my website, Martin P. Robinson. We just updated all that with all the All Hallows stuff, and that'll be kept up to date. We're using that as a resource as we try to get that out there.
And actually, that was the first time I ever found you. Actually, before I ever did puppetry, you're the first puppeteer that I ever conversed with in a way. I was really young. I was doing a production of Little Shop of Horrors, and we wanted a rib pattern for the plant. And in the script, it says that it comes with one or something. And so I called MTI and oh no, we don't have it. So I was like, well, I'll contact this Martin Robinson guy, And I emailed you, and you emailed me back. And then I remember you being surprised that they didn't have it available. I don't know if they still do. I think that maybe they're trying to get people to just rent theirs instead of make their own or something like that along those lines, perhaps.
That might be part of it. They do have a rental program. I'm not crazy about their plants, frankly.
Yeah.
There's for instance, the Monkey Boys.
Nice.
Monkey Boys Productions has great plants that I've checked out and are really work and are official plants. The ones MTI are problematic, and I tried to work with them on the designs. Wasn't hugely successful with that. And I wish that they still had the rib patterns back when it was with Samuel French. You could get a rib, an actual rib pattern that you would then trace onto, foamed polyethylene or the L200 of your choice, and you could actually make a pod based on that pattern. What I really like to do is give MTI an adjusted design that's based on what I learned both in the off-Broadway production and on the Broadway production. Kind of a hybrid of the two.
Awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
Martin,
Thank
thank you so
for-
much. From Humpty Dumpty to this, we appreciate it. So thank you so much. And if you ever want to talk more Hallows Eve or when you got that new sock puppet show, we're happy to talk.
And say hi to Cam for us.
Say hi to Pam.
No, Cam.
Isn't there's still a pet Cameron?
Yes, Cameron's still. He's the little dwarf hamster. He's getting a little old. He's slowing down.
Okay.
Evidently, dwarf hamsters, don't live that long. So, but he's very comfortable and still washes his face every night.
So does this Cam.
Yeah.
At least once a week.
Oh, yeah.
But, well, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, gentlemen.
Bye.